Good morning, everyone. I'm Wafa Hajji, a postdoc researcher from the National Institute of Agronomy. I'm specialized in agro-food technology and process engineering. I work on energy savings and intensification of some conventional unit operations, such as drying and freezing processes. I'm glad to be here with you to share with you today some of my PhD scientific research conducted in order to evaluate the effect of repeated freeze-thaw cycles on some quality attributes of quince fruits during frozen storage. This work was carried out within the framework of Moby Duck project with the collaboration of University of La Rochelle from France and with the collaboration of Stéphane Industry. In fact, Stéphane Industry is a Tunisian agro-food industry specialized in freezing of different or several fruits such as strawberries, quince, dates, apples, etc. They raised several negative impacts of conventional freezing on their fruit quality, such as an irreversible deterioration of cellular tissues due to the volume increase during freezing, a mechanical damage of textural quality after thawing process, and water exudation, which induce a loss of nutritional compounds after thawing process. As a solution, they opted first of all as osmo-dehydro freezing as an alternative technique. Nevertheless, even this technique has shown negative impacts on fruits qualities. Indeed, we have this technique cannot allow final water content inferior than 2 grams per gram dry basis. It has a long treatment duration from 12 to 24 hours of treatment, and without mentioning the adverse effects of osmosis agents such as salts and sugar on consumer health. That's why we should think about how can we improve the freezing process or the conventional freezing process of fruits with high initial water content. We have proposed to Stéphane Industry to apply the dehydro freezing conducted by partial convective air drying before freezing, applied on quince fruit, which is the fruit presenting a very high initial water content. It is about 87% of 87 grams of water per 100 grams on a weight basis. It has a nutritional and great sensory attributes, and quince fruit is well appreciated by a Tunisian consumer. So, in my oral presentation today, I will begin to study or to evaluate the dehydro freezing as an alternative to conventional freezing process. Secondly, we will talk about defreezing vs dehydro freezing during frozen storage of quince fruits. And finally, to give you some recommendation to intensify this technique. So, dehydro freezing process applied as an intensification strategy for conventional freezing was conducted in 3 major steps. First of all, quince fruit were convective dried until different level of water content, 2, 1, and 0.3 gram of water per gram dry basis. After that, samples or quince fruit samples will be frozen at -3 degrees Celsius in order to determine the freezing profiles and their characteristics in terms of, as you can see here, the standard freezing profile of raw material or frozen raw material, in order to determine the initial freezing temperature, the specific freezing temperature, which is considered as the major step of the whole freezing process, and the practical freezing time, which considered the duration to reach a temperature of -18 degrees Celsius. After that, in order to evaluate the quality attributes of Quince, of frozen and dehydro-frozen Quince fruits, samples will be thawed at temperature of 20 degrees Celsius. As a result of this research, we have studied, first of all, the impact of initial water content on freezing profile. And as you can see here in this figure, the evolution of temperature of fruits temperature during the whole freezing process for the different fruits with different initial level water content. And we can observe that the time or the freezing time is reduced by the decrease of water content after drying. In addition, we have determined the freezing characteristics for both frozen and dehydro-frozen Quince fruits. And as you can see here in this table, we conclude that with the decrease of water content in our samples, we remarked or we observed a drastically decrease of different freezing characteristics, especially for the specific freezing time, which is considered as the main stage of freezing or the cruel stage of freezing process, and during which we have the formation and the growth of crystal glass crystals. And we can observe here that we have a great reduction of specific freezing time from 22 minutes to reach about just 3 minutes of freezing time. In addition to that, we have studied the effect of the dehydro freezing process on thawed water exudate, or which we can call that also the drip loss, and its and the texture of frozen Quince. As you can see here in this figure, we note that the drip loss increase significantly with the decrease significantly with the decrease of initial water content. In addition to that, we can conclude by seeing this figure, which represents the maximum rupture of force or the firmness of our fruits samples evolution via initial water content. We can conclude that we have a great retention of texture after applying dehydro freezing process compared to here, as you can see, the frozen raw material without any pre-treatment. So in this part, these basing results show that partial water removal applied by hot air drying prior to freezing process has induced a great reduction of different characteristics, freezing characteristics, which may induce a better freezing performance. It also had induced a decrease of thawed water exudate or a drip loss during thawing process, inducing by that a better soluble nutrition or retention. We can conclude also that partial dehydration used as freezing pretreatment can be considered as a good solution to attenuate the negative impact on textural quality of high water content. These promoting results encourage us to evaluate the impact of dehydro freezing process during the frozen storage. That's why Quince fruits, frozen and dehydro-frozen Quince fruit will be stored during 6 months at the temperature of minus 18 degrees Celsius. And after that, they will be thawed in order to evaluate their quality attributes in terms of thawed water exudate or drip loss, color in terms of browning index, and the total polyphenol content in thawed samples. So as a result of this storage, we've studied the impact of thawed water, the impact of dehydro freezing on thawed water exudate, and this during an ideal, or we called it a continuous storage, during which we have no temperature fluctuation. And as you can see here, with the increasing of storage time, we note that for frozen raw material, there is a great increase of drip loss of quince fruit compared to non-significant increase. There is a stable amount of thawed water exudate during this 6 months for dehydro frozen fruits. These results are well raised even during when we applied freeze-thaw cycles, which mean that we have created a cold chain break by a rupture during every month. And as you can see, during the storage, we have a drastically increase of the thawed water exudate for the frozen raw material from 7 to 33% of thawed water exudate, whereas we have, whereas we have a slight increase of thawed water exudate for the dehydro frozen sample. It passed from 2 to just 4%. The impact of dehydro freezing has been during storage has been described on browning index. Indeed, as you can see here in this figure, which describes the evolution of the browning index during different type of storage, we can take as example the raw material which have been frozen, which have been frozen in both type of storage. As you can see in the figure A, we have a significant increase of the browning index during continuous and especially during repeated freeze-thaw cycles compared to a stable status of the browning index during both type of storage, the continuous one and the repeated freeze-thaw cycles. I will try to show you here some photos of quince fruits applied in continuous storage and during recurrent freeze-thaw cycles. As you can see here, for the raw material frozen without any pre-treatment, we have a deterioration of color properties compared to a great retention of color for dehydro frozen one, and this was detected for the continuous storage and even during the recurrent freeze-thaw cycle during storage. So the impact of dehydro freezing has been evaluated in terms of total polyphenol content loss after 6 months of frozen storage. And as you can see here in this table, we have a great loss of polyphenol compounds in both type of storage, ideal or with freeze-thaw cycles, compared to a slight increase of losses in total polyphenol content. All these promoting results may can help us to conclude that dehydro freezing guarantee a better textural, nutritional, and color quality after thawing and during continuous frozen storage, and even during the freeze-thaw cycles. Also, dehydro freezing contributed to the improvement of the performance of freezing thawing process in terms of treatment time, especially for the specific freezing time. That's why, as a conclusion, dehydro freezing may be a solution that can reduce the negative impacts of freezing on the textural and nutritional quality of food products. Nevertheless, we cannot forget that hot air drying have several drawbacks, such as we know that convective air drying is an energy-intensive process. It has a long treatment time. For example, to reach an amount of 0.3 gram per of water per gram dry basis, we have to dry from 6 to 8 hours. We have also the phenomena of crusting and the shrinkage volume during the conventional hot air drying, and the deterioration of the nutritional quality of dried product, and finally the lack of microbiological control. So in order to remedy to all these problems, our research unit have patented a new intensified way, which we call the ISAD. It is interval starting accessibility drying, which is a new intensification strategy that can be combined with DIC in order to remedy all these problems related to the conventional hot air drying, and can be employed for the dehydro freezing process. So interval starting accessibility drying is an innovative patented. It is a specific intermittent drying process that is based on switching superficial dehydration and water diffusion, combined with DIC, which is an expansive and a technique for expansion foods. We can remedy all the negative impacts of drying, convective drying, and resolve the dehydro freezing problems. So finally, more and always more intensifying process is an interesting approach, and I thank you for your attention. If you have any question, do